There is a tiny island in the Indian Ocean. It is smaller than Washington D.C. Most people have never heard of it. You cannot visit it. You cannot live there. And yet, if this island disappears from American control, the entire balance of military power in Asia shifts overnight. That island is called Diego Garcia. And right now, a deal is being made quietly, carefully, behind closed doors that could hand control of this island to a country that is not friendly to the United States. Stay with me because this story is wild and it is happening right now. Let us start at the beginning. Diego Garcia is a coral atoll, basically a ring-shaped island sitting right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It is part of a group of islands called the British Indian Ocean Territory or BIOT. Now here's where it gets interesting. Britain owns these islands, but America uses them. Since 1966, Britain and the United States have had a special deal. Britain leases Diego Garcia to the US military. In return, America got one of the most powerful military bases on the entire planet. Think about the location for a second. Diego Garcia sits almost perfectly between Africa, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia. It is roughly 1,000 miles from the tip of India, about 1,800 miles from the Persian Gulf, and about 2,500 miles from the state of Malacca, the most important shipping lane in the world. This is not just a base, this is a choke point, a launching pad, a refueling hub, and a surveillance center all in one tiny island. The US military calls it the Camp Justice or officially Naval Support Facility Diego Garcia, but insiders have another name for it. They call it the Footprint of Freedom. Here is something most people do not realize. The United States has military bases all over the world. Germany, Japan, South Korea, Qatar. But Diego Garcia is different. It is in a league of its own. First, let us talk about the runway. Diego Garcia has a 12,000-foot runway, one of the longest in the entire Indo-Pacific region. This means it can handle anything: B-52 Stratofortress bombers, B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, C-17 cargo planes, P-8 Poseidon submarine hunters. During the Gulf War in 1991, Diego Garcia was the launch point for long-range bombing missions. During the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, bombers flew from Diego Garcia. During the Iraq War in 2003, same story. This island has been at the center of nearly every major American military operation in the last 35 years. But it is not just about bombers. Diego Garcia houses a massive deep water port. The US Navy keeps a fleet of pre-positioned ships there, ships that are already loaded with tanks, ammunition, fuel, and military gear. If a war suddenly breaks out in the Middle East or South Asia, American forces do not need to scramble supplies from the United States. They already have everything they need floating right there in the Indian Ocean, ready to go within days. And then there is the intelligence side. Diego Garcia hosts a ground station for the GPS satellite system, the same GPS that guides American missiles, drones, and soldiers. It also hosts a hydroacoustic monitoring station, basically an underwater listening system that can detect submarine movements across a huge portion of the Indian Ocean. Take all of that away and the United States loses its eye, its ear, its arm, and its fist in an entire ocean. Now here is the part of the story that most people skip, but we are not going to skip it because it matters. Diego Garcia was not always empty. People lived there. They were called the Chagosians, a community of people who had been on these islands for generations. They had homes, farms, churches, and cemeteries there. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the British government forcibly removed them. All of them. About 1,500 to 2,000 people were uprooted from their homes and relocated to Mauritius and the Seychelles, hundreds of miles away. They were given very little money, many lived in poverty, and they were never allowed to return. This is a dark chapter. Courts have ruled against Britain multiple times. The United Nations has called it a violation of international law. The Chagosians have been fighting for the right to return for over 50 years. And now, this moral and legal wound has become a political crisis. Because Mauritius, the country where many Chagosians ended up, has been claiming sovereignty over these islands for decades. In October 2024, something happened that sent shockwaves through Washington, London, and military circles around the world. The British government announced a deal, a sovereignty deal with Mauritius. Under the proposed agreement, Britain would hand over sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, including Diego Garcia, to Mauritius. Now, on the surface, this sounds like a good thing. Britain finally doing the right thing, returning stolen land, letting the Chagosians come home, and that argument is real and it is valid. But here's the problem. Mauritius is a small island nation with limited military power, and Mauritius has a growing relationship with the very important country, China. China has been investing heavily in Mauritius for years. It has been building infrastructure across Africa and the Indian Ocean region under its Belt and Road Initiative. And Mauritius, which relies on trade, foreign investment, and diplomatic support, has been moving closer to Beijing. American and British military officials are not worried that Mauritius is going to attack anyone. They are worried about something far more subtle and far more dangerous. They are worried that China could gain access to Diego Garcia or gain intelligence about what happens there through its influence over the Mauritius government. To understand why this matters so much, you need to understand what China wants in the Indian Ocean. China has a big problem. It imports more oil than almost any country in the world, and most of that oil comes through the Indian Ocean, through the Persian Gulf, through the Strait of Hormuz, through the Strait of Malacca. If America ever blocked those routes, China's economy would collapse. Beijing calls this their Malacca dilemma, and it haunts Chinese military strategists. To solve this problem, China has been quietly building influence across the Indian Ocean. It built a naval base in Djibouti right at the entrance to the Red Sea. It has been investing in ports in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and East Africa. Analysts call this the string of pearls, a chain of Chinese-friendly ports that stretches from the South China Sea all the way to the Persian Gulf. Diego Garcia sits right in the middle of all of this, right in the center of the string of pearls. If China could gain even partial influence over it, that would be a massive strategic victory and a massive American defeat. When word of the deal leaked in late 2024, Washington reacted strongly. US senators sent letters. The Pentagon issued warnings. Members of Congress from both parties stood up and said the same thing. This deal cannot happen. Not like this. Not without ironclad guarantees that China will never set foot anywhere near Diego Garcia. The Trump administration, which came into office in January 2025, was particularly harsh. Officials called the deal a giveaway and a threat to American national security. There were reports that Washington threatened to cut military and intelligence sharing agreements with Britain if the deal went through as written, and London was caught in an incredibly awkward position, stuck between doing what the courts and international law demanded and keeping its most important military ally happy. The deal stalled. Renegotiations began. As of 2025, the situation is still unresolved and still tense. Step back for a moment, because this Diego Garcia story is not just about one island, it is about something much bigger. We are living through a period of history where the rules of global power are being rewritten. The post-World War II order, where America dominated the seas, is under challenge. China has the second largest economy in the world. It has the largest navy by number of ships, and it is pushing hard to extend its reach beyond its own coastline. The Indian Ocean is the next big battleground of influence. Roughly 80% of the world's seaborne oil trade passes through this ocean. More than half of all container ships pass through here. It connects the Persian Gulf to Asia, Africa to Europe. Whoever can project power in the Indian Ocean influences global trade, global energy, and global politics. Diego Garcia is the key to all of that. It always has been. That is why Britain seized these islands in the first place. That is why America built its biggest Indian Ocean base there. And that is why China would love nothing more than to have any kind of foot in that door. So where does this all end up? No one knows for certain. The deal is still being renegotiated. The Chagosian people are still waiting to go home. America is still pushing back. China is still watching. And Britain is still trying to satisfy everyone while satisfying no one. What we do know is this: whatever happens to Diego Garcia will send a signal to the rest of the world. A signal about whether international law matters. A signal about whether displaced people can ever get justice. And a signal about whether the United States can still hold its strategic strategic position in the most important ocean of the 21st century. This tiny island, smaller than a city, indivisible on most maps, carries the weight of all of that. That is the story of Diego Garcia, and it is far from over. If this video taught you something new, hit that like button. It helps more people find stories like this one. Subscribe if you want to understand the real moves happening behind the headlines. Drop a comment. Tell me, do you think Britain should have made this deal, or was it a mistake? I will see you in the next one. Bye.